In this video I'll show you how I installed an electrical subpanel. Here's my existing main panel inset into this basement exterior wall and behind this white cabinet door cover. My plan is to install the subpanel to the left of the main panel, also inset in the wall. Here's the subpanel I'm going to install. It's an 8-space, 16-circuit, 125 amp subpanel made by Eaton. So I cut this test hole in the wall, confirmed that the stud is where I thought it is. Then after I marked the center line of where the conduit will come into the main panel, I marked off a 1/2-inch wide strip that I'll plan to cut out in order to install one piece of conduit. And then up here is where the supply power for the subpanel will come in. There's another 3/4 EMT knockout in the main panel right here. And so the conduit will come out from the main panel there and then down into the subpanel. So this picture shows the layout that I just described. Supply power will come in through the top, and power for different circuits will go out to the bottom right, back into the main panel, and out to their respective locations. Here I'm drilling holes through the studs for the conduit, and then you can see here on the other side of the stud, the drill bit coming through. Careful not to hit the panel. Here I'm marking the drywall to remove, and then installing 2x4 blocking in between the studs so that I have a solid structure to mount the subpanel box to. After I hung the box up loosely, I put all the conduit in place, loosely fitting everything together, kind of like a dry fit in plumbing, so that I could make sure I get all the connections, get everything loosely fit together. Here you can see I'm putting the compression fittings on one end of that short run of conduit and getting everything in place. And then once I get everything loosely attached together, I'll go ahead and secure the subpanel box to the blocking and then tighten all of the conduit fittings up. So then it was the same process up here, getting each of the pieces of conduit in place, getting them into their respective fittings, again just sort of loosely in place, so that I could make sure everything fit together, and then go ahead and screw the box down and tighten up the conduit fittings. Now with the box and conduit secured and in place, I can begin wiring everything up. So here's the wire I'm using. It's a 6-3 wire, and because I'm going in conduit, I don't need this ground back here. So I'll just strip all of the sheathing off and then get it fished through the conduit. So now I'll take my 3 conductors, fish them up through the conduit, and then they'll come out in the panel. Okay, so you can see that those 3 wires have come out of that piece of conduit up there. And then down here in the panel, I've just coiled up the excess wire. Next step will be to turn off power to everything and then connect the subpanel to a breaker on the main panel. All my existing breaker spots were full, so I removed 2 single pole breakers that had enough slack in their wires that I could move those circuits to the subpanel. Then I repositioned the remaining breakers, leaving space for the double pole 50 amp breaker that will power the subpanel. Next I installed a lug on the neutral bus bar that will hold the 6-gauge neutral wire for the subpanel. Then I pulled the wires into the panel, roughly measured for length, and removed the electrical tape I used to protect the wires while fishing them through the conduit. Next, I stripped the end of the neutral conductor, connected that to the new lug on the neutral bus bar, and then stripped the ends of the red and black conductors, connected those to the new breaker for the subpanel, and then snapped the new breaker for the subpanel into place. Then for those two circuits that I just removed, I ran the wires for those two circuits through that short run of conduit and over to the subpanel where they will be powered from. I had to do all this while the main panel was de-energized. And then, of course, gotta keep the labels up to date. Next, I wired up the subpanel. I cut the neutral to length, stripped it, and secured it to the terminal, and then did the same for both of the two hot conductors. So now with the subpanel wired to receive supply power from the main panel, I went about the task of connecting the two circuits that I had to move from the main panel over to the subpanel and connecting those to their respective breakers and installing them. First thing I did was strip the neutrals and connect those to the neutral bus bar. I capped the hot leg of a spare circuit that's not being used, and that's the red wire you see there. Then I took the hot legs for those two circuits, the orange and the blacks, connected them each to their respective breakers, and then snapped the breakers into place. All right, moment of truth. Everything's wired. The two new breakers are off, as is the sub panel. So let's energize the sub panel and see if we're good. All right, no issues, didn't trip. All right, so I turned on the lights and the fan in the bathroom, so as soon as we turn this on, we should hear the bathroom fan kick on. Hey, all right. Let's energize the sump pump. Looking good. All right. And there's the finished sub panel. I then patched all the drywall holes, primed and painted everything, and then had a contractor come in and put in the white cabinet door to cover the sub panel, same size, color, and style as the door that's already covering the main panel.